Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are going to get started in just a moment. So, Monica, would you like to put up a poll question for people to answer?
That is a lovely idea. Here's one. Do you know how much water you use? Yes, no, or you haven't thought about it. And that's fair. That's fair answer.
Oh, neck and neck here on the yes and no's. Yes. All right.
Give it one more minute.
Monica, you're in charge of the poll questions.
Okay. I'm going to stop the poll. And majority of people on the call know where their water know how much water they use. That's pretty exciting.
Great.
Are you guys ready for another?
Go for it.
Okay. Give me a moment.
We have a bunch of people signing on, so that's great.
No, here's the second one. Do you know where your water meter is located? Yes, no, or you'll have to check because you're not sure. And that's okay.
Great.
It's not necessarily something people think about all the time, so I can see if, oh, maybe if I launch the poll. There you go.
Okay. Whoa, that's great.
Wow, look at that.
Great, Monica.
Yeah, we'll give them a few more minutes.
91, 81. It's interesting how it fluctuates. I'm not sure how that happens. All right, we have people who are going to check where their water meter is. That's great.
That is fantastic. Okay. And I'm going to end the poll. And here are the results. Majority of people, 89%, know where their water meter is located.
Great.
Which is fantastic.
All right. We are at 12:02. Would you like to get started or wait one more minute, say? All right, why don't we go ahead and get started, okay?
Okay.
So thank you all for joining us today for How Much Water Does Your Landscape Really Need? My name is Cheryl Buckwalter. I'm one of the presenters today. My company's name is Landscape Liaisons, and I am a residential landscape designer, consultant, and educator, and all-time enthusiast for conserving and using water efficiently. I'd like to introduce Marcia, a co-presenter today.
Hi, I'm Marcia Jimenez Scott, and I'm a landscape designer and arborist, and I usually work in the foothills, but I come down to your valley also, and we all share the same problems with water scarcity. So I am a proponent of sustainable landscapes and saving lots of energy in your yards. So next, who's going to answer questions in the chat is Sule Tranquilli. Hey, Sule.
Hi, everyone. I'll be on your chat and taking your questions. And Charlotte and Marcia will answer most of those at the end of the presentation that we're very excited to bring to you today. And I'm a landscape designer down here in Sacramento Valley. And I do make my way into the foothills here and there, but I love native plants and low water use plants in the landscape. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, so for today's webinar, you might have noticed that the microphones and cameras are off. How do you like the little fish? Please enter your questions into the chat, and we will have some time at the end to answer your questions, and then Monica will be sending out a survey afterwards, so I would love it if everybody would please complete those surveys. We always welcome your information, learning what you want to learn about. And technology. We are in a virtual world of technology, so if something happens, please bear with us, because we will do our best to have plan B and C in place to get back on board right away. These webinars are being recorded, and they will be available at bewatersmart.info with the /webinars. That's where you signed up for this webinar. And also, when you see a little hand like this, what you will see is that means that there is a handout that is available with more information. So I'm excited to present today. Our co-host is the City of Roseville, the Water Efficiency Division. And they have residential programs, as you can see on the upper left-hand side. They are doing modified water-wise house calls. And what that means is they can come to your side, to your home, and do a house call for your landscape. And then they can also do virtual house calls. And so it's really wonderful because they can check your irrigation system, help you with scheduling your controller and understanding how to use it and so forth. And what's best is that they are free. So you can just call the number or go online to roseville.ca.us/savewater and sign up for a WaterWise house call. They also have other resources available. There's up in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, there is an irrigation watering schedule that you can download. And it's based on seasons and gives options for what type, based on what type of equipment you have. And then also there are some example front yard landscape planting plans. And they have a cash for grass rebate, $1 per square foot up to $1,000. But if you're not a City of Roseville resident, please go to bewatersmart.info and you can get information about the incentive programs that your water provider offers. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcia.
So why are we here today? Today, we're here to learn the motivating factors. Why do we want to save water? How much do we need to know about what our landscapes really use? And what are the water needs of plants? How do we figure out really how much water our plants really need? Most of us don't know how much water our yards actually use. And reducing water consumption, we're going to try to help you learn some of the basic ways to help conserve water in your yards. We want to help you. Cheryl's going to help you do that at the end. So next, please. The why is because we don't know how much water our landscapes really use. Let's face it, water is not a very exciting topic. If you rated things in your landscape, you can get excited about number 1, smelling and picking the flowers. Number 2, planting new flowers. Number 3, watching the cute birds and butterflies and fishies. Number 4, bragging about your cool yard. Okay, the bragging should be number 1. And way down the list, about number 10, will be watering your yard. But it's really important. So in California, we go from wet years to dry years. On the left is a beautiful waterfall photo taken this spring in Northern California by Soleil. And on the right, well, we're all used to seeing that at the end of the summer. It's a familiar Central Valley scene in September. We're more likely to see the dry year. California's rainfall is often feast or famine, flood one year and drought conditions the next. 1 or 2 dry years don't mean we're in a drought. Multiple dry years can cause concern. This week, the state announced we're entering a serious dry year for the second time in a row. Second year in a row. That means bad news. We got to conserve water. This is our future. In California, water really is that scarce, and we should not take it for granted. Saving water should happen no matter what. because there's never enough water to waste. In Sacramento, your households use an average of 300 gallons of water per day, and at least 60% of that is outdoors. Along with saving money, reducing your water protects our future. When we need water, wouldn't it be nice if you turn the tap and it's there for us to use and you weren't on tons of water restrictions? Let's do our part. Let's figure out how much water our landscapes really need and stick to that budget. Next, please. How much water do our plants use? It can be bewildering to the point where we almost feel like we can't be bothered to know. I'm going to show you how it can be quick, and I'm going to give you a tool that's really, really easy to use that tells you exactly how much water that plant needs in your yard. Next. So here's the per plant method. You can go to this link, How Much Water app. It's a wonderfully easy to use app. I really encourage you guys to use this. On the drop-down menus, you get to choose what California city. The time frame is when, like we've chosen weekly in July, the hottest time of the year. What plant? Well, the plant here is a hydrangea. This guy is a really high water user, and it thrives in part sun or part shade, part sun or part shade. And this particular hydrangea is a dwarf, so it's 3 feet. Then we're gonna press the calculate button and boom, there you go. It needs 7 gallons per week in July. This is a beautiful plant, but it needs 7 gallons per week in July. That's a lot of water when you consider your own personal use. So next, we're gonna, here's a few examples of some high water plants. Redwoods are from Northern California coast, where they get lots of their water through fog drip. They require almost as much water as a lawn does. Not surprisingly, when they're thriving, usually they're near a lawn, an irrigated lawn. If you're going to use a high water plant, up on the upper right are vegetables. Make your plants work hard for you for that water. Get something out of it. Get some food like a vegetable. And of course, on the right, there's lawn, which is the highest water and energy user of them all. There better be a good reason for you to have that thing. Now we're going to go try the same calculator for a low water plant, same conditions. Roseville, what time frame? Weekly in July, low, but this plant is low water in part sun. So it's a different plant factor of 0.2, and it's also the same size as this dwarf hydrangea. Boom, its water needs are 2 gallons a week in July. Check out that calculation, less than 1/3 of the similar high water use plant. And there are so many interesting and beautiful plants that have low water needs. Make it easy on yourself and limit the endless plant choices by deciding on a low water plant. Here we see some California natives. The one with the yellow flowers there is a flannel bush. The one with the magenta flowers, a western redwood, and up on the right, that cool spidery red flower is a western spice bush. In the corners are lavender and winter blooming hellebore. These guys are all low water users. There's plenty of exciting plants to use that don't require a lot of water. Now, in between low and high water are moderate water use plants. Lots of plants you're familiar with need moderate amounts of water. Oftentimes, sensible planting plans will be a combination of moderate and low water plants. They use high water plants areas really sparingly, small lawns, small shade areas with hydrangeas and rhododendrons. That way we can keep the amount of water our yards use down to a reasonable amount for our region. We're able to create a landscape with a water budget that makes sense for California. Cheryl's going to spend some time getting you familiar with water budgets. And along the way, please enter your questions into the chat.
Great, thank you, Marcia. So let's dive into how much water does your yard actually use. So the City of Roseville Water Efficiency Division, they have created this calculator for you. You will see some additional resources for other ways to figure out how much water your landscape needs, but this is a special calculator, and we have a handout for it where it will have step-by-step instructions for how to use it. So keep that in mind as we go along. There are basically 3 sections to this calculator. And you're going to say, an ETO calculator, what does that mean? And so don't worry about it. We're going to cover this because I know we always say, ET, what? And so we are going to show you the big picture of how this water budget can work for you, because we want to water only the amount that our landscape needs, okay? So that's what number 1 is going to tell us. First of all, number 1, how much water does it take in our region to keep your landscape lush and lovely? That's your water budget, okay? Sort of like your household budget. You know how much money you have, so you know how much money you can spend and save and so forth. Watering beyond the budget is really just wasteful. And this is drinking water that we're wasting. Then for the monthly flow, number 2 here, this monthly flow calculator, that's going to help us figure out how much water you are actually using in your landscape, okay? And then 3, we're going to compare the budget against how much we're using. So this is what this calculator looks like. I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but take a look at this. There are 3 areas in pink. We have our irrigated landscape area, we have the location and the description, and then we have our irrigation zone run times. Those are the 3 areas that we'll be filling in. The rest of it, this calculator will do for you. So let's take a look, and this is a little math, some equation. This is the science behind it, but we're going to show you how easy this can be. So let's break it down. In the first section, what I did in my landscape, I took this irrigated landscape area and I added up my areas with plants and where I'm watering, and it came up to 4,125 square feet. That's what I have to enter in under the January line. And then it's the same for every other month. That doesn't change. So that's what we want to first find out, is what is that measurement? So the 3 elements that go into this, we just covered one. It's the landscape area, our square footage. Evapotranspiration, we go, oh my gosh, what is that? It's a big word. It basically is the amount of water to apply to your landscape due to water loss from evaporation from the soil where the plant is growing, and then transpiration, the breathing of the plant. So the plant is kind of sweating, if in a sense. And so that's the next one is plant factor. So with the plant factor, that's just talking about how much water that plant or your plants need. So those 3 areas. The first 2 we're going to talk about. We're just going to break it down. Our square footage of our landscape area and what the ET is, the evapotranspiration. So then we look at this pink area. We've already got this number. We've measured our landscape. We've measured the lawn, where the trees are, the plants and that sort of thing, and just plug that number in. Sometimes you can obtain that number of your irrigated landscape area from your water provider. And sometimes what you can do is, if you like to use Google Earth, is you can use their measuring tool to measure your landscape areas. Another point that I would like to make about the evapotranspiration column, this ETO, basically it's important to know that evapotranspiration is really important to our water cycle because it's responsible for about 15% of the atmosphere's water vapor. And without that input of water into the atmosphere, we don't have clouds, so we wouldn't have precipitation and so forth. The reference part, and I'm just going to say this quickly for you, but we're not going to get deep into it. But the reference part is basically determined by measuring weather conditions in a region and then estimating, that in California, we're going to say we've got a standardized area that's lawn, and that is well watered and well cared for and maintained. And so how much water is being lost to the atmosphere. So our landscape factor, that's our next one that we're going to cover. And that has to do, I think I skipped ahead one. The landscape factor is going to have to do with the 0.8 right here in this pink column. And basically, this is just an average of the number of trees and lawn and shrubs and so forth that you have in your landscape. And if you have plants that are consistently one type of water, then you can use a general category like this. We'll be looking at the gallons of water, although with this calculator, it does calculate cubic feet of water because that's how most water providers take the water use readings and calculate. But we're going to look at gallons because that makes the most sense to us. So let's break it down a little bit more. So we're in step 2 now, where we want to write down in this monthly flow calculator how much we're using. So first we looked at how much we should use, our budget, and now here's where the rubber meets the road and we get to see what's really happening. So what we want to do is if you have 4 irrigation stations or valves, they're called also, you want to enter those in, write down the location. Where is this? In mine, it's a low water use planting area that's on drip irrigation, and it's near my shed on that first line. And the neat thing is that we're going to click on this cell, and you'll see it in the next slide. We can click on that cell and it will drop down for us. There we go. It'll drop down for us what month we want to enter in when we're actually taking this test. So we can leave it in July. The reason I do that is that's because it's the hottest month, okay? And so we're going to think about this in just this 1 minute right here under test run times. That's how long I'm going to run each zone, one zone separately. But before you start, let us make sure that all the water inside and outside of our home is turned off. You see this little dial with the turquoise raindrop circling around? If you've turned everything off inside and outside, but you see that still going around, that means either something is still on or else you may have a leak. And if you do have a leak, that leak detector dial or low flow indicator, it's called, will let you know. So call your water provider for a free WaterWise house call. And we do have a handout for you. That's what this little hand with the piece of paper says. We have a handout for you that will explain what these numbers on this dial means, okay? And so the next thing you're going to do, and this would be good if you have somebody perhaps who can help you. You're going to go to your meter, and under meter read start column, you're going to write down the number as your meter is sitting there, okay? And then after we run it for 1 minute for that valve, we're going to write down the next number. That's the ending number. So then let's go to find our controller. It's often inside your garage or it could be outside. So find out your controller, and we're going to look at currently what it's programmed to run each zone. So my number 1 zone is running for 30 minutes and so forth. So enter those times into the column. Then remember we had the ETO calculator that was telling us what our water budget is. So that's what this is, this 17,759 gallons. Then our monthly flow calculator, what we were actually using, came out to 21,000. So we can do that math. We are over budget by 3,500 gallons, okay? So we want to keep in mind that is potable drinking water that we are just wasting. And, you know, what happens too when we overwater is that can create a lot of other problems. You know, plants can get diseases and increased pest problems and so forth. So what can you do if you are over budget by 3,500 gallons? Well, let's see. I still have my square footage the same, 4,100 square feet. But what about if I change my plants to low and moderate water use? Then the average plant water use factor is going to be this 0.5. So we already are reducing those plants and the amount of water that those plants need. So I still have my low water native plants on drip. I still have these second valve and planting area, but look here, I've changed some of the turf, some of the lawn to low water use ground covers and shrubs. I'm keeping my fruit trees though, and they're going to be a moderate to high water use plant. I've adjusted my run times, as you can see, because the plant material is different. And then next, with making these few changes, look what we've accomplished. We changed our plant factor, our landscape factor to the 0.5. So we now have a budget of 11,100 gallons. And how much are we using? 6,463. So we are 4,600 gallons of water under budget. So congratulations for that. We are well under budget. So don't forget to enter your questions into the chat. And again, for more detailed information, step by step about how to use that calculator, that information is available on bewatersmart.info, and you can go to roseville.ca.us/savewater to download that calculator. Marcia, let me turn it over to you. Did we lose you, Marcia? Well, I'm just going to keep talking then. So, but I know when I first showed this calculator to Marcia and to Soleil, they thought that it would be a really good tool to help figure out what the difference is and how much we can save. So let's go now on to a few basic practices that will help you save water in your yard. Soil.
Thanks,
Soil.
Cheryl.
Are you back?
I'm back.
Yay. See,
Yeah, wow.
internet, technology. Go for it, Marcia.
That calculator talk it really showed me a lot. I learned a lot when I watched you talking about it and broke it down for me. Now I'm going to help you decide how to conserve water in your yards. There are some basic landscaping practices you can use that will not only conserve water, but they'll really benefit your plants and all the wildlife habitat in your yard. When we think of storing water, images of barrels, tanks, even pots come to mind. Surprisingly, one of the best places to store water in your yard is right under your feet, your soil. You'll want to turn your soil into a sponge and at the same time create a vibrant growing medium for your plants. Adding compost to soil builds a support system. The sponge-like nature of compost means that rain or any water applied to your landscape will be absorbed and stay in your soil for a while for those plants your own plants to use. At the same time, compost and other materials improve soil's ability to slowly percolate water through it. So it makes the soil more absorbent. The water can drain right into the soil instead of running off. Then follow compost with 3 inches of organic mulch, which means stuff that can eventually decompose. Organic mulch to slow evaporation, protect roots, and moderate soil temperature. Next, please. If we want to get the most out of that drop of water, we're going to make thoughtful plant choices. So we're going to choose our plants like our garden lives depend on it. In our own lives, we want to save that water. Also, our wildlife also depends on your choices. Now you know how to choose low to moderate use plants when possible. You can also easily choose plants that support bees, birds, bugs, and butterflies. California natives are always good, easy choices. They've already been designed to thrive here. They're adapted to the California climate. They are adapted to our soils, bad as they might be, and the local wildlife likes them the best. So on this picture, the picture before the redwood and the deodar cedar, we have a few California natives. So in this picture, the cedar and the redwoods, we want to choose the cedar. The redwoods use a ton of water. Thanks, Cheryl. So you don't want to choose redwoods and you do want to choose cedars. This is a case where this California native, the redwood, is a bad choice. The redwood is a high water use plant and it has terrible manners. which anyone will tell you who has tried to garden under one. And the cedar is drought tolerant, a low water use plant, and it has pretty good manners actually for eventually being just as large a tree as the redwood tree. Next, please. On this slide, it shows you a hydrozone plant, another big word that might be confusing, but actually, along with thoughtful plant choices, hydrozoning is the way you group plants together, and they can really affect your water usage. So on this slide, you can see that the low water use plants in the blue are all in one place in the backyard. In the high water use plants, the lawn is all in one place in the backyard. Really easy to irrigate, very efficient. We're going to get the most out of our water. However, in the front yard, those plants are all mixed up. Really difficult to irrigate, really inefficient. So when plants are mixed up like that, basically your irrigation system has no choice but to water the water to the plant that needs the highest amount of water. So you can imagine we're wasting a lot of water when we do that. We don't have to, and some plants can't even handle that. They'll die, some low water plants. So here's a slide full of pictures of efficient irrigation. You can save a lot of your water by utilizing efficient irrigation. Drip irrigation is one of the most efficient irrigation styles. Here we see a couple of pictures of a drip grid irrigation system. It's composed of drip tubing, that's the brown tubing, with emitters built right in at regular intervals, like 12 inches, 18 inches, etc. The lines are laid in parallels, and the drip, in essence, forms a grid. This style of drip irrigation allows for future growth of plants. And then in the upper right corner, this style of that sprayer is a high efficiency rotary nozzle, and it's a good replacement for the average spray nozzle. It emits water slower than a regular sprayer, allowing the soil to absorb the water rather than running down the street. And that feature of that head, along with other features, helps reduce water wasting. Finally, the City of Roseville website, Water Efficiency, has a great section called Watering Tips. It may show you a few ideas of about watering that you might not know. And when I go into yards, sometimes the first question people ask me is, how much should I water? What should I do? How should I water? It seems so simple to me. I always have to say to my clients, check your soil moisture. It seems so basic, but it's really true. This does not have to be rocket science. There's the screwdriver test. You can try to sink the screwdriver to the hilt. If it goes in easily, it doesn't need water. If it's really hard, that lawn needs water. This method will also keep your fingernails clean. Then there's the cute little froggy moisture meter. It's easy, it's very general. It's not always accurate, but it gets you in the ballpark. And hey, you're trying. Finally, there's the soil probe, much harder to use, but with the plug you get to see the soil with your own eyes, how deep it's moist. These can be really handy. They're a little tough in really dry soil. But finally, this is really basic, you guys. You can always dig a small hole. Depending on your plant types, the soil should have moisture 3 to 12 inches deep. To really know if your landscape needs water, you really should check. So, Cheryl is going to let you know some resources to help you do all of this.
That's right. We promised we would give you a variety of resources. So we have this calculator that the City of Roseville has developed. And as I said, there's a watering schedule there. You can download it at roseville.ca.us/savewater. There's also a very easy to use Sacramento Region Smart Irrigation Scheduler. You enter in a bit of information. So for example, what city you're in, there's a big drop-down list. You select your zip code. And what's really neat about this is that if you have watering restrictions, like you're able to turn on your sprinklers 2 days a week, you can enter that in. And so it is based on current weather conditions. So it's really a great tool. You enter in a few bits of information like, are you using sprays or drip? Do you have low water or moderate water use plants? Are you in a windy area? And boom, you'll get a schedule. So that information is at beyondthedrought.com. And then also earlier in the presentation, when Marcia was talking about individual plant water needs, you can go to waterwonk.us/how much. So that's a great couple great resources for you. Also at bewatersmart.info, so much information. There are controller rebates available. And like I said, you can find the rebates that your water provider is offering and a lot of other helpful information so that you can schedule your irrigation properly, plant the right plants, many resources here for selecting low water and California native plants, and a step-by-step guide to take you through transforming your landscape to a more water efficient landscape. And figure out how much you want to do yourselves. Who can help? Here are some great organizations with professionals who can help you. And this presentation, as I said, is going to be recorded and available. But let's first remind you to enter questions into the chat. And we are now going to look at what some of those questions are that you've had.
Hi, Cheryl. So we have a couple of really great questions. The first one is, where do I find the landscape factor?
Where do you find the landscape factor? Good question. On the instructions, so there are the general factors. And are you talking about the landscape factor, the 0.5 and the 0.8?
Yes, I believe that's the Roseville spreadsheet that was being referred.
Yes. Yes, so on that calculator, that is already put there for you. But in the instructions, there's also a link, and that's a great question because there's a link, because if you're not in Roseville, you can go there and find out what your, actually it's what your evapotranspiration factor is. And then also there's information there that lists, if you have a high water use plant, then it's going to have a factor of this to this. If you have a moderate water use plant, it's going to be in that 3.5, excuse me, the 0.3 to 0.6 range. And so all those are also listed on the instructions for the calculator. I hope that helps.
Hi, Cheryl and Sule. Also, your nursery tags, when you buy those plants, should give you some idea of how much water the plant uses. And when you go to that per plant method of the WaterWonk site, on the drop-down menu, it'll ask you, is this a low water plant? And then it'll apply the right plant factor to it, or a high water plant or a moderate water plant. So
yeah, that's a great tool, Marcia, great tool.
You can find the numerals for the plant factors there.
Yeah, that's an easy location. Do we have another question, Sule?
We have an excellent question from Kenton. He says, we now have a drought tolerant front yard. How do you know how much water to emit at the individual drippers to each plant and or bush?
Okay, Marcia, do you want to start or?
Sure. Well, that same per plant tool is going to tell you if that plant, how much water it needs when you calculate for it. And drippers are usually built in choices of a half gallon, 1 gallon, or 2 gallon. I will say that you ought to put more than one dripper on each plant. You should put at least 2 just in case one of them fails. Yeah. And you're going to try to hit that amount of gallons per week. So most low water plants don't want to be watered every day. Most low water plants want to be watered once a week. So if that says 3 gallons a week, you're going to give it 3 gallons with that combination of drippers.
Yeah, 2 things I would add to that, and that is always try to use the same gallons per hour in drip in an area. So if you are using 0.5 gallons per hour or 1.01 gallon per hour, try to have the same gallon per hour throughout the whole. Don't mix like a 1 gallon, a couple of 1 gallons over here and a couple of half gallons over here. It makes it harder to schedule. Also, the gallons that how much water to water each plant, that's for an established plant. So we want to make sure every plant, when it first goes in, we want to make sure that the soil stays consistently moist until it gets established. And that can be somewhere around a year to a year and a half before you start a weaning process to get the plant to the amount of water that it needs at maturity. And then you're going to be cycling that water. Okay, so it's not going to be all at one time, but you'll cycle it. Just like there's a term with sprinklers, cycle and soak. You turn on the water just for a length of time where it doesn't run off, it soaks in, and then that's the soak, and then cycle it again. But anyway, so what's another, we hope that answers your question. Another one, Soleil?
You bet. About the handouts will follow after the presentation. They'll be posted with the fabulous presentation here. So hopefully that will answer that question. And we have a lot of great information for you. Marianne is saying that she has brown drip hose. Her question is, how much water per hour comes out?
So it will depend on, number one, what the manufacturer is. The brown drip hose can be by Netafim, Hunter, and other manufacturers. And if it sometimes is stamped right on the brown tubing where it will say 0.5, and sometimes it's not. And then another factor is that the emitters are going to be in the drip line, and you might measure, are they 12 inches apart, or are those emitters every 18 inches apart? And if you don't know, what you might want to do too is just test, turn on the system for the zone for that, and let it run for a certain period of time, and check and see how long it takes for there to be what's called a wetting pattern, for the soil to get wet and move out. And then also, what you can do is use that soil probe or dig a hole, as Marcia was saying, to see how far down the soil is moist for the given period of time that it ran. So that's really the important thing, once it's already installed, and if you don't know. But Marcia might have additional information to add to that.
Well, I would just have to say, you should check. You should check and combine that with your knowledge of what kind of plants you're watering.
Mm-hmm.
If they're low water plants, like I said, you got to let those poor plants have a break between moist soil. They want the soil to dry out. And if you have a higher water plant, those plants like the soil to stay moist. So that's going to decide how often you run that system.
Yeah. And you and see if you can see any markings on that brown tubing, but and then that would tell you the manufacturer, and then that manufacturer, and go to your local retailer that has good irrigation equipment. It's a little bit and then also there are the irrigation stores where a lot of the professionals go, and they can help you as well. Also, you might call for a WaterWise house call. That's a little reminder to do that. And the water efficiency experts will help you determine how much water you need and so forth with your system. Work with your system. Thank you. Soleil?
Oh my gosh, these are such great questions. Okay, so Lisa is saying she's having difficulty with clay soil in Lincoln. I feel for you. Tending to water too much, too little, or not long enough each time. The water doesn't move throughout the soil easily. I know you have a great answer for that one.
So Cheryl, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So you're trying, from what I understand, you're trying to work with this soil that seems like it's really hard and clay. So a couple things. One is do what's called a jar test. So take a sample of your soil, put it in a jar, and you want to take out all the, no mulch, no organic debris, that sort of thing. You want to go down maybe 6 inches in your soil, get a good sampling from a couple of places in your yard, put it in this jar, put water in and shake it really, really well. Let it settle out. And you can go online. There's great tutorials about how to do this, because what we're trying to find out is truly, even though your soil might be orange, that doesn't necessarily mean it's really a lot of clay. But there is sand, silt, and clay, and those will layer out or settle out and help you determine more about what kind of soil you have. Another thing is dig a hole, put water in there, and then time how long it takes for that water to soak into the soil. In
I
some
want to break
places,
in.
it
I want to
takes a
break
long
in really
time.
quick here.
Yeah, sure.
For a second. So when Cheryl says let it settle out, plan on that taking a few days if you have a lot of
It
clay.
could, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because depending on the combination and the percentage, if you will, of the amount of the different minerals in the soil, but you can improve your soil, honestly. Organic compost and mulch are your two best friends when it comes to improving your soil. So I really want to encourage you to watch other videos. Master gardeners have put out some wonderful videos about how to improve your soil, the UC Cooperative Extension Master Gardeners. Anything else to add to that, Marcia?
Yeah. So the way you put water down on the soil is really going to make a big difference. You want a really slow emission rate if it's truly tight clay, because clay absorbs the water really slowly. So you don't want to put water out there at, say, 5 gallons a minute when your soil only absorbs water at the rate of a half gallon an hour. You can see how that creates all these runoff problems we see all over the place.
Yeah.
So usually tight soils are the best way to deal with them is with a drip system. And in drip, you want to start choosing really low rate emitters. You don't want to go, oh, hey, there's a half gallon emitter, but if I get the 5, I can really save a lot of money. That's not the way to think about it. Your soil really determines the how fast you should be putting water out on it.
And I would just say, if you end up having a high clay content soil, embrace it, because water moves into it more slowly, but it stays there longer, and it goes out more wide. And so you get more coverage of your soil. So, but learning to manage it, interact. That's one of the great things with the calculator that Roseville developed, because you get out there. You want to see what's going on, feel what's going on with the soil, monitor your system, check it periodically for leaks and so forth. So don't get me started. I could go on forever. What's another one, Soleil? And then I think we're getting close to our time here.
Yeah.
So another really great question that I know you guys are going to enjoy answering this, because this is right in tune with what we're up to today. Let's see, 1240. Okay. This is Jamie asking. She's asking about trees and shrubs and perennials being on the same hydrozone if they're all classified as low water use. Or would trees still need to be separated since they have presumably deeper roots? I love that she knows this.
Yes.
More water to reach those roots. Take it away.
Well, I'm going to let Marcia take this on as our certified arborist.
Okay. I am a certified arborist, but I'm also a landscape designer, and I help people with landscapes. And the reality is that most people don't want to put in the extra line for trees. The really true answer is trees should have their separate line. The reality is it almost never happens. So I usually am telling clients to do a little bit, to put in the system for the water zone that you have the shrubs under. And then in the summer, 1 or 2 times a month, to give those trees a deep drink of water, because those perennials, say they only have roots down maybe 7 inches, but the trees, you want the water to go down a foot. But you don't need to have the water go down there constantly. If it's down there, it's going to take a long time to dry out. So maybe twice or once a month at least, maybe twice a month, but same, check the soil.
Yeah.
And when I say water the trees, we're talking a slow trickle overnight. Like if you're adding water with a hose or something, ideally, if you're not, you're going to run that drip system a long time. I would never recommend a spray system separate for the trees because it just doesn't put the water out slowly enough to sink way down there. We
Yeah.
want to get the water down to the 12-inch level.
Great. We hope that answered your question. Sule, would you think there's one more question before we wrap up here?
We got it.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm just going to say thank you very much to our sponsor, the Regional Water Authority and Be Water Smart, and also the City of Roseville Environmental Utilities as our webinar host and creator of this wonderful calculator for us. As we've mentioned, the recordings and the handouts are at bewatersmart.info/webinars. And please sign up for more. The next one is going to be on March 31st at 12 noon. And the topic is Drought Tolerant Mediterranean Climate Gardens. So we want to thank you very much for joining us. And please stick to your water budget. Take
Thanks,
care,
everybody.
everybody.
Are you guys ready for a final poll question?
Let's do that. Okay, let's do that. Poll question.
Okay. Would you be interested in a class that goes further in depth on this topic? Yes, no, or maybe?
Say yes. Say yes.
Yes.
Oh, we've got the yeses.
So I just want to say, everybody who's stuck with us through this whole presentation, kudos to you. Very brave. It's really good to understand the resources of the state you live in.
Yes,
Okay,
you're
I'm
right.
going to end the poll
Okay,
and I'm sharing the results. 78% said yes. That's pretty exciting.
okay. That means we got to get to work.
That's
Yes,
right.
plan
Yeah.
another one. And final question, are you inspired to try the budget calculator? Answers are yes, no, or maybe.
Oh, yeses, lots of yeses. It's fun. It's
Great.
fun to play around.
Okay,
All right.
give it a few more
Thank you.
minutes.
That's good. Great.
And here are the answers. 73% said yes.
Good. Very proud of you. Thank you. And remember, your water providers can help you. Get those free WaterWise house calls.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off now. Okay, Monica?
Okay, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
attending.
And thank you, Soleil. Thank you, Marcia. Yes, thanks to you all for attending.
Thanks.